Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to the Web Talk Show. Today with us is Erik Skogsberg from Voltage Control. Welcome, Erik.
Hello, good to be here.
Thank you for being on the show today. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the VP of Learning Experience for Voltage Control, and Voltage Control is a facilitation academy that really at the end of the day helps people get better at leading collaboration. So we train folks across a variety of enterprise companies on the B2B end, and then on the B2C end, we have certifications in facilitation that folks take once a quarter. We have a cohort in those, and then we have a small grouping of B2B consulting where folks will come to us when they just have a wicked problem to solve and they need
hmm
to have a conversation at scale, if you will, and then we will facilitate and deploy our teams of certified folks to guide there. So
Nice, nice. And I was looking at some of your videos, and everything that you show looks so fun and
yeah.
engaging. And sometimes we see training companies or
Mhm.
just workshops, etc., and it's someone just speaking to a crowd. And here it
Yeah.
looks like they're completely interactive, and people are pasting stuff on the wall, and they're
Yeah.
doing all sorts of activities. So could you tell me a little bit about what that experience is like and why you do it so differently from everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, first, you're making me think, unfortunately, workshops have been given a bad name because of those experiences, right? When people hear workshop, too often they think of those stand and deliver kinds of things that are so focused on content over the experience itself. So a lot of this comes back to our belief that, the most impactful things that folks will go through when it comes to training are experiences, deep, impactful learning experiences. And so that means they need to be interactive, they need to be hands-on, they need to give people an opportunity to actually do the things that they're learning, because then that stands a much better chance of people applying that after things are all done. So when we're putting together a meeting, workshop, or training others to do so, we start with where do you hope people are going to be by the end of this? How are they different than when they entered that space? And then we put together the pieces of the experience from there. And oftentimes that does involve some fun, hands-on, interactive activities. So
Interesting. So these experiences, they're at a certain level bespoke for the organization or whoever you're giving the training to.
absolutely. So and I'll dial back a little bit. When we're training teams on facilitation itself, we have some core competency areas that ground everything that are the same across the board. So we ground our curriculum in five competency areas for leaders and facilitators, and that's that they are purposed, they're inclusive, they're clear, crafted, and adaptive. So all the curriculum is based there. But then we'll customize based on the metrics or growth that those companies are specifically hoping for. So based on a role, so let's say we're working with product managers, they're going to have specific ways that they're going to need to show up in workshops or meetings. And so we'll tweak some of the activities and cases to match that, even though it's still based in what would be the same set of competencies that all our curriculum is grounded in.
Oh, that makes sense. How
Yeah.
did you get into leadership and training and all this?
Yeah, good question. So I'm actually trained as an educator, as a teacher. I started out my career many years ago now as a high school English teacher. And so from the beginning, I've been interested in my career in how to create the right conditions for people to have the right conversations in support of going in some direction, right? So at first that was about, how do I construct conversations around books and poetry to help youth ask really important questions about their lives and the world. And I found as I was in that I was just as interested in the conversations that adults were having in those schools and districts as they were going through organizational change. and that led me to some research and a PhD around org change and how humans go through that process and how to best support them there. And it was just right place, right time, because they were asking a lot of questions at that university, Michigan State, about how to design and redesign learning experiences, and even the university itself. So a colleague and I stood up the Internal Innovation Center for Michigan State, headed up a lot of the corporate collaborations and partnerships. Design thinking, design sprints were really hot at that time, both in the corporate and in higher ed space. And so one thing led to another as we stood up that Internal Innovation Center, collaborating with corporate partners. Pretty soon, companies were asking us to come in and help them redesign their experiences. And one thing led to another, and I was working with Jake Knapp and John Zaratsky on the development and designs of their design sprint workshops, and active in that community. And that's where I initially connected to voltage control. And Douglas and I struck up a conversation at that point, and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping voltage control build out training programs and facilitation programs?" And that's when I hopped over into that space. So
Nice. I really want to get into design thinking as well, because I know listeners will get a kick out of that. But before we get into that, what is the difference? And I ask you because of the background that you just explained, adult learning versus childhood learning. I know there's a big difference. Could you just tell our listeners a little bit about the differences between how we as adults learn versus how children learn, just in a general sense, because I know there's a lot of research on it, and most of us don't know about it.
absolutely. Well, one thing I'd say before we get into that is I think too often folks who come into designing learning experiences only or have limited training, and it's mainly on the pedagogical side of things versus the andragogical side of things. And so they take what they'd use for classroom experiences and just plop that right down in working with adult learners. And it's not that there aren't some good analogs there, but I think you miss out on some important pieces of what it means to motivate adults in learning, and important to be thinking about ways that adults anchored in purpose and having agency will be much more bought into what you're putting into place. Obviously, with where individuals are in terms of brain development and where they are in their human experience, they're going to be more or less open to certain things and have different levels of agency. And so when it comes to childhood learning or adult learning, there's just different factors that are at play. So for example, when I'm thinking about putting together learning experiences for adults, I'm thinking about life experiences they've had. I'm thinking about a schema that I can already tap into that's relevant for them. I'm also thinking about their motivations and what would be motivating for them and getting bought into the experience I'm creating, which is going to be different for kids in a space. Also, you have different levels of agency, right? When we're talking about adults maybe choosing into certain experiences, and kids being in a public school classroom and having to be there, right? So just there's different layers of what you can use in putting together those pieces. So I mean, we could talk a long time about all the different shades there. I'd say at the end of the day, helpful for people to have perspectives from both spaces, because there are some good analogs that you can pull from each in support of where you're hoping to go, but it's not a direct, hey, you can use the exact same techniques you would use for kids as you would use for adults, because they're just at different points in their lives, different points in their development. and you're going to tap into different elements in order to support them in growing in the direction that they want to. One thing I would say, though, when it comes to adults, unfortunately, at points, and this is why I so loved teaching the age that I did, oftentimes sophomores and juniors here in the U.S., is how open they were to asking really deep questions of identity at that point, that unfortunately for some adults, right, they're more fixed in their ways, or at least at that point are fixed and are less, say, open to entertaining some of the things that you would bring in design thinking experiences, right? And think about all the way back then to elementary school, right? You know, those kindergartners are much more open to sketching, drawing, coloring, and here we're having to really scaffold adults back into that space, you know. So
I've heard from a few of our guests in the learning and development space that parallel. Some had experience in teaching kids before, some didn't, but many were just dropped in to a training role, in some cases a leadership role and then a training role, sometimes just directly into a training role. And everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. Do you think there's resources, especially with how technology is today, that people can use to learn about that adult learning concept so they can understand the differences and perhaps perform better?
absolutely, absolutely. And there's some great, just off the cuff here. This is a nice thing about having a computer in the background. Some of my favorites here, if I pull this up, and as you could put this in some show notes for folks. So a couple of favorites for me: Julie Dirkson's work, "Design for How People Learn." It's a great resource there that gets to some key learning and especially adult learning principles. She has a new one as well here. I'll pull that up. That's specifically about designing learning experiences that support folks through change. So, "Talk to the Elephant" is a recent one there, which taps into some of the frames that Jonathan Haidt brought to us, and thinking about humans and change, and the rider and the elephant there, which does get to some key pieces around behavior change and adults. And then also aptly titled "How People Learn" is a great resource that is from the National Research Council in the Division of Behavioral and Social Sciences and Education. And this is an older resource. The first one is, and then there's a aptly titled "How People Learn Too." And it's a nice compendium of the key research around adult learning that is easily consumable, and I would say both anchors approaches that I take as a learning designer, and then also equip folks as we help them think about designing workshops and learning experiences. So couple good resources to draw on.
Thank you. Those are great resources. I'll link them in the show notes as well for people to find, because sometimes it's just hard to find this information. Many people don't even know about design thinking at all. They've never heard the term. And I remember when we were in college, finishing college, we heard about IDEO, and we started learning about that, my partner at the time and I, and it was so interesting, but it was something we stumbled upon. And not everyone was reading into that. And so what is design thinking? How can people understand that concept?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, design thinking is taking the mindsets and tools of designers and deploying them in ways that help, organizations, teams, create the best solutions to whatever challenges and opportunities they're facing. So, and IDEO, to your point there, and the D School at Stanford really did a great job getting this out more publicly. We're finding that hey, designers approach problems in some really meaningful ways. They spend time really understanding the needs of the folks at the core of this problem or opportunity space. Spend time defining the contours of the problem versus just going to solve a problem. I think too often folks jump to, let's solve a problem, and it may not be the right problem to solve because they haven't spent time problem framing. So let's really understand the needs of the folks at the core of this, use that to define just what the problem is that we should be tackling, then ideate potential solutions, really opening things up, choosing from those solutions to then prototype some initial steps forward, and then testing those out with the real users of these solutions to see if we're going in the right direction before we invest a lot of time and energy. And that mindset and that approach has been the core of some really cool and key solutions at many of the top companies, brands, etc. But it's not something that should be limited to those designers. It's something that anybody really is capable of learning to do, and then bringing it into their work.
Nice. There's a parallel with what we do with is software engineering, and if you're doing things right, or at least in the way I like to do them, where you go in and you first observe and ask questions, you were saying that you build prototypes even before getting into implementing anything, you get real feedback from the actual users before building, because like you said, you probably might not even be building the right thing. So doing these prototypes helps a lot in our space. So how does that translate to other industries outside design and software? What would a prototype be in the real world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is a question I oftentimes get, especially when I'm working with educational and nonprofit audiences. It's like, well, it says, I know you use this with these software or product companies, and I can see how this could go into a design of a new shoe or a new app, but what does it mean for me? And this is also something that we advanced as we were doing work at Michigan State, because we deployed a lot of this around learning experiences and even the design of whole programs. You can prototype just about anything, because at the end of the day, a prototype is really just an early guess, tangible guess at a direction that you should go, and putting it into a form that allows you to test out that direction. So this could be a process for a team that might be mapped out in terms of a process map. This could be new marketing copy that you get out on a fake website or a facade of a website that gives you an opportunity as an organization or a new, in our case, college or department, seeing if, hey, the direction we're going to go, is that going to resonate with folks? This could even be, we used to do this when we were working with folks on the redesign of spaces. This could be shifting the way that things are set up in your space in some way to test out, how do people experience that, react, before you put money into, let's completely tear down or put up walls. There are ways that even when we were in the hub at Michigan State, would test out different traffic patterns, right? So what would it look like if people came in here and then went over here? There are ways to direct and test that out before we'd invest any more time in that. So I always tell folks, prototyping is a culture and is a mindset. It's about getting ideas out early and often and seeing if you're going in the right direction. And so I'd encourage folks to try that out, even just in their meetings. What does it look like to develop an early version of an idea, maybe mock something up that people can work on together on a piece of paper or a digital format, or even just getting a few ideas out early on stickies can cultivate that prototyping culture and mindset.
Getting ideas out early is huge. We
Absolutely.
struggle to perfect things even before it's relevant, and so we waste a lot of time just thinking, how should we do this? Will people like it? And we're just going round and round and round, where some maybe smarter people will decide, no, let's just do it. Especially kids. You were talking about kids and then preschool,
Absolutely.
etc. So especially younger crowds now, with all that we have the technology available, they can prototype something immediately. They have an
Yeah.
idea, they'll go on Lovable or whatever, just
Yes.
build it
Mhm.
and see if people like it. And
Yep.
then some of those explode,
Yep.
and there's a lot to be learned from that. I think from what you're
Yep.
saying, there's, if you iterate fast on things
Mhm.
that might not be complete but that give you feedback,
Yeah.
these
Yep.
mock-ups are very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always tell folks, get the you don't know if you're going the right direction until you get that out there and you can react to something, your team can react to something. So better to have multiple things out there that we can then narrow from versus trying to narrow it first and we may miss something that never gets out there. And I think that's something that it's a muscle that can be developed, right? That you can get better the more reps you have in just throwing ideas out there, and then converging after you have a bunch to choose from, and that can even come down to how you share things in meetings, right? How do you create a culture where people are willing to throw out the ideas that may seem crazy at first, but it's interesting to see which ones ultimately live on. And sometimes it's those ones that folks would have censored, right,
Mm-hmm.
at first because they thought, oh, this isn't completely baked yet.
That we had a call yesterday. It's like a
Mhm.
group call thing for
Yeah.
sort of a coaching type thing, and I came in late to the call, and
Hmm.
a guy was explaining an idea he had.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when he finished explaining, it was a simple idea, but the concept, the person who was taking care of the call was like, you have a brilliant business idea. Like you already
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
everything. It's perfect. And then he just went
Yeah.
on to explain how he could just blow that up
Hmm.
immediately because he already
Yeah.
had everything. It was
Yeah.
just, he had it as an idea and was still trying to massage it, but
Yeah.
just with the little information he gave on the call was enough to spark
Okay,
the
that's great.
true thing. So it
Yeah.
was very interesting to see as a spectator that happen.
Hmm. And it sounds like that the space was set up that was welcome, and then you could build from there. And also too, when those spaces are created, then you don't end up wasting a ton of time going in holding things back, putting in a lot of work, and then finding out, oh, actually we didn't go in the right direction. We need to spin all that out. And organizations are guilty of that, these 1, 2, and 3 year cycles to only find out that, oh, actually we invest all this time and money and it's not going in the direction that people want, versus like, let's just mock something up early and see, like, yeah, do people want this, or what pieces we have a hunch, right? I think prototyping is a form of hypothesizing, right? You prototype when you have some questions to answer, and that then guides us to say, like, yep, let's keep this piece, or let's add to or remove these pieces, and let's try it again.
You've mentioned meetings a few times.
Hmm.
Can you tell me about magical
Oh
meetings?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you're referring to a product piece of our curriculum, Magical Meetings, which is really focused on helping people improve their meeting culture. And I'd say, just in a thumbnail sketch here, magical meetings are those ones that don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
the typical meeting, and in what many of us, I'm sure, have experienced, that feel like a waste of time, feel like they go on forever, feel like you don't or haven't moved the needle on things. Magical meetings are those experiences that also hopefully some of us have had and want to recapture, where we're really able to move things meaningfully in terms of our work. We're building relationships with people that we work with, and that time just passes. It almost seems magic to us that we were able to get work done together. It was meaningful. We were in a state of flow that helped us move in the directions we're wanting to go. And our magical meeting curriculum and training experiences help to set people up to design more of those. And that's anchored in some key principles, again, that the best collaborative leaders and facilitators use in anchoring their design in purpose and making sure that the right people are in the room, in putting together the right sets of methods. And when it comes to meetings, especially, we introduce folks to this core mantra of ours, which is do the work in the meeting. Too often, folks end up talking about what they're going to do, and then they save the work until afterwards. We work with people on setting up, how do you create an experience where people can actually advance the work right there? This gets to the prototyping culture, because it's like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's build something together right now, right? Versus let's wait and come back. And a lot of that is based in really being clear on purpose and what you're wanting to move forward. Another mantra of ours in any time we work with organizations, and at the core of this curriculum, is no purpose, no meeting. And so that's where a lot of meetings go off the rails, is folks gather people together without a clear sense of why. And so then everything else goes off because of that. If you're not clear on why you're gathering people, then you're not going to choose the right methods. You're not going to have the right people in the room, and then we're just going to replicate these not magical experiences. We'll say that.
Non-magical.
Yes.
This brings up a couple of very interesting points. One is cost per meeting, which is now being discussed, how much each of these meetings is costing you. And two, if you say you got the right people in the meeting, that means one, okay, you're paying for those people to be in the meeting, which means if they can actually work during the meeting in something, then you're saving money, because now the right people are there. So that means everyone can do what they need to do in the meeting. And it's like you're saving some cash at the same time that you're actually building something.
Yeah. Both you're saving some cash, and that you're being most efficient there. Also, too, because you have the right people in there, you're getting the highest value, right? If you have the right mix of folks in the room, then the solutions that'll come out will be that much more valuable. So time is not only wasted, you also are hopefully going to be surprised by then the valuable outputs that come out there. And I think too often, because folks don't start with purpose at the core, and again, back to our competency areas here, purposed, inclusive, clear, crafted, adaptive. If you're not clear on your purpose, well, then who you invite or include is not going to be the right folks. And so everything just cascades from there. I think people just don't think as deliberately as they could about that, and don't meaningfully design meetings in the same way that they would workshops and these impactful experiences that they're putting together. And I'd argue that for a lot of folks, when they ask where could I start with this, it doesn't have to begin with a large multi-day or multi-month set of workshops. It could just be in this hour meeting that you have on the calendar. What would it look like to revisit the core purpose? How might you redesign if that was more at the core? Do you have the right people in that space? Those are fundamental questions.
I think that will resonate with a lot of people, especially remote, where you have a weekly meeting, for example, with part of your team and maybe a third-party provider. And there's many people that never participate in the call. They're just there for listening purposes, and maybe they'll have some input. So perhaps they don't really need to be on the call. They could get a transcription automatically sent to them with the key points and follow-up steps. But that way, that would make the meeting more efficient. You still would have that staff being able to work on whatever they actually need to work on, and you'll get further, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've found that when they take this seriously, it can be really refreshing for companies to free people up, right? All of a sudden, it's like, oh, I guess I don't have to be there. now I have more time. And then when I am there, my time is going to be utilized meaningfully. So that's especially these routine meetings that we have. Those are the ones that I think are ripest for redesign, because oftentimes they just exist by routine now. We've stopped thinking about why we do them. We've stopped thinking about why certain people are there. And I always tell folks, those are the ones to go after first, right? Let's ask these fundamental questions, then give yourself and the people there license to redesign, and also to take it off their calendars if it's not going to be meaningful. And there are other ways to get them the information, especially if you find out that at the end of the day, this was just about, half of it's just about disseminating information. Well, all right, that could go out via email, and then let's set up this time for us to actually do work together.
That's good. People who are listening, if you didn't know, Zoom and many other tools, but Zoom now does it. It will transcribe your whole meeting.
Yes.
Google Meet
Yep.
does that as well. And
Yep.
it might even give you key points, etc. And if it doesn't, just drop it in ChatGPT, free version or whatever. It'll give you a summary and key points and next steps and everything. So you don't even have to have someone taking notes. This could be done for you automatically, such that you just enjoy your meeting and learn and grow and build. And then whoever needs to receive the information, they can receive it offline.
Yep. And that's also too, that's something that we just have that as a default setting. It frees me up to be more present in facilitating or guiding teams versus needing to be taking those notes. You can ask live there, the AI companion, to fill in some of the blanks. And then, I use those transcripts and summaries to come back to as I'm thinking about next steps. And to your point, that could be sent to folks who aren't there, or maybe don't need to be part of the core conversation, but just need to be informed. And then when you do invite folks, then that really means that you've thought deliberately about them being there. And so hopefully they then show up differently, because it's like, okay, I'm here for a reason. And so I'm going to dive in and show up in a much more active frame.
I have two questions, technical questions regarding meetings. You have vast experience with big enterprise. I know some of your clients are NASA and Meta. So is there a good number for time or length of a meeting in general? And two, do people really need to have weekly meetings in their calendar, or is it more of a one yes, one no kind of thing, or is it completely based on who it is?
Yeah, great question, and I'll have a complex answer here, hopefully helpful for you and the audience. It depends, and I'll lay out how it depends here. So always depends on purpose. What are you hoping to accomplish, and where are you hoping to go? Why you're gathering people together. So if it's stand up and update and decide on where to move things forward, well, then that's going to be a quicker gathering, quicker meeting that we're talking about 30 to 60 minutes there. And when we're talking about Zoom and those virtual spaces, those kinds of meetings should be kept brief or briefer, right? We don't want people sitting on screens for so long. If we're thinking about more immersive, we're gonna do work, we're gonna move things forward, maybe we're introducing new concepts or changes, those might be more half day, full day experiences there that we're putting into place. That said, you really need to think deliberately about how you're breaking those up for folks to make sure you're getting the maximum value there. So I always will tell folks that when it comes to breaks, you want to make sure you have them, and you're thinking about putting those into place every 60 to 90 minutes in your agenda for those longer pieces. depending upon what you're asking folks to do. So if it's a lot of people just sitting and watching, I'm going to err more toward the 60-minute mark to take that break versus the 90. 90 minutes, if I'm having people get into breakouts and we're talking, we're really active, well, then that time is going to pass much more quickly, and I'm not demanding so much of folks. And the same thing for the in-person space there. So again, think back to your purpose. What am I hoping to advance here? And then you think about time accordingly. And to the point of our conversation earlier, if the point of the meeting is really just to share out information, do you need a synchronous meeting for that? Or could that be a succinct bullet pointed email? Could that be a Loom? Could that be a Slack message? So that when you gather people synchronously, you are maximizing the value of folks there, which the maximum value there is collaboration, right? So doing something together. That's and I give you license to jettison those just updates, or maybe have that occupy less of that meeting time, so that you can really free up some space for people to do work together.
This is really helpful. For me personally, we do a lot of calls with clients, for example, updates, that sort of stuff. And you'll find with time that many of those, the vast majority of the call is going to be updates and then a few questions.
Yeah.
Those with Loom, for those who don't know, Loom is a fantastic little tool. There's a free version. You can also pay for it. But if you've ever tried to record video on your computer or just a message, this just makes it so much easier. You click on it, you start recording, you can see yourself there, you can put yourself on the screen, you can make yourself larger, smaller. The idea, in my opinion, is you just click record, talk to the camera, show what you need to show, stop, and it's ready. It's already there in the cloud. It'll give you a link. You can paste it in your email, and it's done. You don't have to edit. You don't have to upload it, wait for it to process. No, it's just it's there, immediately accessible. And it does a transcription for you. It adds captions for you.
Yeah, and the AI advancements in there, it's amazing. It'll even remove the ums in the course if you want.
It'll clarify it for you. Yes, and it's such a nifty little tool. I didn't use it before, but I started receiving a bunch of them, and so I did away, for the most part, my ScreenFlow and my Wistia and my so many other things that had to do many steps. And so this makes sense. So doing a Loom instead of a longer weekly call, if it's updates, just send them that. They'll be able to just read it if they want. If they want a visual part, they can watch it. They can watch it in 2x. If they
I oftentimes will do that. It's like this, 2x there, and that, because it was really just a, hey, pay attention to this thing, or I want you to check out this new piece that we've put in, and that's it.
Yeah, and you can leave meetings for, as you were just saying, very succinct. This is what we are talking about. This is what we're working on. We are actually collaborating in the meeting. Anything else can be done at whatever is convenient, when the time is convenient for the recipient.
And that's something that is the core of our work with folks. It is really improving collaboration at the end of the day. I think to your point earlier, so much human capital is wasted in not providing the right conditions to collaborate together. And so much of our work in companies hinges on the quality of that collaboration. So whatever we can do and have done to support folks in improving that's a key piece of our work, because the future and the value of our work as companies, especially as the landscape is shifting so rapidly, really comes back to the quality of our collaboration. So, and you can get better at leading that. That's based in our ability to facilitate as leaders, and that's going to be the difference maker for folks moving forward, whether they're in the office, whether they're outside the office, whether it's hybrid. Getting better at collaborating is going to be the key differentiator. Already is. So
nice. Is there a I want to get into actual logistics of
Mhm.
the physical meetings, but for those of us who use virtual meetings, is
Mhm.
there something like Zoom that people
Mhm.
can use that's a little better for collaboration, or is Zoom basically the norm?
So we're a big fan of Zoom, but we use it oftentimes in collaboration with other tools. So oftentimes what we're doing is is a combination of Zoom and Miro, so
Okay,
that
yeah. Hmm.
you have both the affordances of Zoom to both have plenary conversation and then flexible breakout opportunities, because we're oftentimes working with larger groups, and it's essential to make those larger groups smaller, and you do that through breakouts. And Zoom has led over the years in that ability, and still does. It's our favorite tool to go to, both for designing and putting people into those breakouts, and also giving people the flexibility to move in and out. And then we use Miro, great visual collaboration tool there, to then go hands on together. Because anything you could do on a physical whiteboard, you're going to be able to do that and more in Miro, when we're mocking things up, when we're just even doing some basic affinitizing of sticky notes. Here we all are on Zoom, and let's now put into place initial ideas, identifying themes, and then talking in relation to that Miro board. So
That's a great tip. We use Miro with one of our clients in India.
cool.
They
Yeah,
use it, but
yeah,
we collaborate on it, and it's been a
yeah,
great experience because
yeah.
they just have everything there. And so
Hmm.
you're on the Zoom call, and then I can go on the Miro, but you don't even have to share screen, so you can still have your
Yep,
full Zoom. And
absolutely.
then since it has the real time aspect of it, you can see what other people are doing in the Miro
Yep,
board in real
yep,
time.
yep.
And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's great. It's worth taking a little preview
Absolutely.
into what it can do, because like Eric was saying, is there's everything you can actually do in a whiteboard. You have this full canvas, but then
Mhm.
also you can import other data from other tools and
Yep.
embed task management right there.
Yes.
And it's just, yeah, that's a great tip.
Tons of helpful templates there too. So it's great, for folks who are just starting out, or
Mhm.
developing their abilities to facilitate different kinds of meetings or workshops. Many times there's a lot of the templates already in the Miroverse that folks can put into place, so you don't have to create things there. Also, the AI sidekicks, a new feature. They're utilizing AI to make sense of what's emerging on the board, is really cool and meaningful, and helps advance the conversation, to the point that you can select a group of stickies and ask the sidekick to identify themes, to suggest next steps out of the meeting, those kinds of things that would sometimes get rushed through. The other thing I'd say too that's great for Miro is that it keeps things documented. I mean, how
Mm.
often have we been in an in-person space and try to think back to, what was that thing on the sticky? Did we get a picture of it? Well, it's all right there. So we actually end up with our clients doing, even in the in-person space, we'll have folks in Miro in some way,
Mm.
even face to face, because of that value and continuity, right?
Yeah, that's right. What I really liked about that experience, because all the project is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Months of
Yeah.
data are
Yeah.
there, and we can always go back. And like you said, what
Mhm.
did that sticky say? Well, it's
Right?
stuck there on the
Yes.
board.
Yep.
And it's not just the data from that call. It could be all the calls. It could be whatever
Yep.
development you're doing. It could be
Absolutely.
prototyping, mock-ups, anything. And it's just there.
Yep.
And it's,
Absolutely.
I didn't know about the AI stuff.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, it's
that's good.
it's it's newer there within the last few months, so I'd check it out. I believe it's publicly available now. We've worked with Miro over the years, so had early access to some of those
Mm-hmm.
things, but I believe it's now out for users. So
Nice. I'll check that out.
yeah,
Speaking of AI, what
yes,
should leaders know about the use of AI in their company?
yeah. I mean, that's a big that's a big question. That's a big question. Well, I mean, out of the gate, especially when it comes to leading collaboration, that it's a really useful tool and teammate in helping to augment your collaborative abilities. So with our clients, we're working with them on approaching AI as a collaborator, as a team member that can bring new levels of subject matter expertise, that can help to expedite some of these prototyping processes. I mean, it's amazing now what AI can do to help us take an idea from something that's just in our heads to making it more tangible for people to react to, and or creating a whole series of different versions that then we can end up reacting to and make some decisions about, that frees us up to really focus on then strategically making some choices there. I think and hope that leaders will see it again dynamically as something that can be embedded within teams to augment the great capabilities of what's already there, and then freeing us up to collaborate with teammates in even more meaningful ways. And another thing I'm seeing and encouraging leaders to do is to break ourselves of just seeing AI as the assistant that goes and gets us things either before or after a meeting. That AI can be a real-time collaborator and teammate, even to the point that we were working with folks out at South by. We had a session on AI teaming and a big workshop that we did there. And we had people try on different sort of AI relationships and personas. And one of them was AI as co-facilitator. And so we gave them some different prompts that they could do during a meeting to help somebody as a leader or somebody guiding a meeting to make a decision real time. Like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what I'm noticing. What would you suggest in terms of a shift or approach, or what might be some good questions or prompts that we could give based on what I'm seeing here? And that helps us to really extract the highest value out of AI as a tool versus or in ways beyond just, hey, go and do this research for me, or hey, could you do this email, which is helpful, right? But I think it keeps us from seeing and experiencing other affordances as well.
Very nice. I saw that in action today. We had a meeting, this particular client in India, and we were looking at a code that they had to do an emergency migration for a site. And
Yeah.
we were looking at a code to figure out what it was doing. And we had these two files open, and we were examining, and we had found three of the items. And so I
Yeah.
commented on one of them, like, oh, this is the DPMO source. And then I did tab, and the AI automatically went to the other one and told me what it was because it could read
Yeah.
both files. I'm like,
Yes.
wait, is that right? And I asked him. He goes, yeah, that's the right one. And so
Yeah.
we didn't have to. Then we checked, of course, but it
Yeah.
just saved us a few minutes of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that, I think then that's a good question for leaders to begin asking themselves. All right, if this now helps cover those tasks that would have kept us and occupied our time before, what does that free us up now to do, and how does that help us go even further in and deeper in our work, if we can more automate and or pass off some of those tasks, right? All of a sudden that frees and gives you back some time. What does that help you to do in terms of creating something new, in terms of thinking more strategically about the work with that client? And if we can be purposeful about that, I think we can get to deeper places together.
Nice. This has been fantastic, Eric. You've shared so
Absolutely.
many good insights, and we're going
Yeah.
to get some snippets of those to share to the
Cool.
listeners as well on social.
Yeah.
What would be a recommendation, if you had one, for people that are in the leadership
Yeah.
area or in
Yeah.
training?
Yeah. Yeah. As far as next steps and
Hmm.
things that they could do. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say come to voltagecontrol.com. There's plenty of ways that you can level up your abilities to guide collaboration and lead teams through a bunch of free resources we have in terms of templates. We have free webinars in core fundamentals in facilitation, collaborative leadership. We have certification programs in facilitation, and then for companies that want to help level up their teams, we have an opportunity for trainings that introduce you to the fundamentals of facilitation and collaborative leadership. And we've had the great opportunity to work with, as you pointed out, a lot of top companies and organizations all over the world. So voltagecontrol.com, you'll see plenty of resources there. Also, too, within the last 6 months, we launched a free online facilitation lab community. So digital space where leaders of all stripes can skill share, can crowdsource ideas, can be in these kinds of conversations like we're having here. And those are tied to regional meetups, actually. Okay. So last time I was seeing we're over 50 different regions all over the world, monthly meetups where folks get together and both have these conversations, but also practice different facilitation methods with each other and get feedback. So all the details there, voltagecontrol.com, and can continue that journey. And I'd also say too, always love to have these conversations with folks. So happy to share my email with you that you can share with folks to pick that up too.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. I'll put your resources that you shared as well and the link to Voltage Control. Everyone should head over to their site. They've got so many good resources on there that I found myself amazingly interesting. So thank you so much, Erik, for coming on to this show. And I look forward to speaking again.
Absolutely. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Cheers.